Okay, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to Pizza Day. I have been, everyone can hear me, right? We're all good before I start going?
I'm good. I went in on my phone.
Okay. All right, I just want to make sure people can hear me before I start. Okay, so I hope everybody's having a wonderful day. I have been studying pizza for several weeks now, trying to find like my method for the perfect crust. I think I figured it out. I am now very sick of pizza, but I have a lot of information, so I'm excited to share it with you. We're going to talk about a couple different crusts today, so that if you're gluten-free or you're paleo or grain-free, you have a couple different options, and kind of go over some flours and all of that fun stuff. If you have any questions, like always, feel free to unmute yourself and ask. Let's see what you guys have. Okay. All right, good. Okay, so pizza. Really, it's been a lot of fun working with yeast. I have learned lots of things about yeast. Yeast, you can kill yeast, which I did know, but I didn't know how easy it would be. So just some food for thought when you're working with yeast in general. If you're making a bread or you're making a dough or whatever, if you're trying to proof your yeast or you're trying to work with your yeast, you don't want the temperature to exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit, because that will kill it, and it is a living thing. So then by killing it, the dough won't rise. You'll just see it like it'll just sit there like a pile of dough that doesn't rise. It just kind of sits there like this flat, dense mound. A friend of mine who's a pastry chef said her perfect temperature is around 110 degrees. And again, I've read it's anywhere from 110 to 120. So that's some fun stuff to know about yeast. It's been kind of difficult to find it. However, I did find on Amazon, I could get a 2-pound amount, and it came in like within a week or a week and a half. So I don't know how often they have that, or if they have it all the time, or if they still have it, but that is a source you can use if you can't find it in the stores. I still haven't seen it in the store, at least in several weeks I haven't seen it. So that is good to know about that. In terms of flours, I think I just want to start briefly in talking about these different flours, because I didn't realize there was such differences. The first crust that I made, I used an all-purpose flour, thinking, how different can they all be? They're very different. They're just very different. It has to do with the amount of protein in the flour. It has to do with how finely milled it is. So especially if you're reading about pizza, they often talk about on the different message boards and everything else, they talk about this 00 flour. So I was fortunate enough to find some at Adams Fairacre Farms near me. I also was able to get some online, but it was way, way, way overpriced online. So if you have a local specialty store or a market near you, shop there first. The 00 flour it's a more finely milled flour, which is why they recommend it for pizza, because it creates these really nice air holes, these air pockets, but yet it still is able to have a very crisp crust. So it's kind of this great mixture of textures. And that is very true. I really, really enjoy working with this flour. The other flour, and again, I couldn't get more of it. I used the last of it to measure out for today, is bread flour. And the recipe I gave you for our 72-hour dough recipe uses bread flour, which is much easier to find than this 00. So I did both of them and compared them. Again, texturally, the 00 I think has the nicest texture, but the bread flour and the 3-day fermentation is so close to it. Like it's like minimal difference. So if you have bread flour available and you want to play with that, I highly recommend it. And this recipe, it's not mine, it's from Baking with Steel. You can actually check out their website if you're interested to watch. They have like little videos and stuff that they have as well, kind of walking you through. I'm going to walk you through this today. But they're fantastic. They've worked and mastered this recipe, and that is why I'm using it today. It just works great. I really can't say enough good things about it. So that's kind of some differences in the flours if you're making a traditional dough. For gluten-free, which was like my stage 2 process, gluten-free crust simply means, and for those who don't know, it just means you're using a non-wheat based flour. So it can include a mixture of flours. It can include, the one I'm using today uses a couple of rice flours and some tapioca or arrowroot flour. It can be some of them, all of them. It's a mixture of them. If you don't want to make your own mixture from 3 different kinds, like I did, you can buy a gluten-free pizza crust bag. This one is a Bob's Red Mill version. And generally they recommend a 1-to-1, meaning like it's the same kind of ratios I understand as a wheat-based flour would be. It mimics it. So you could use a wheat-based recipe and just substitute in this gluten-free flour. And for those who are very sensitive to gluten, it would also work well. Last crust we're gonna make today is the zucchini crust. So like then we get into fun crusts with, if you're trying to stay low carb and you're trying to watch your sugar, that are grain-free and vegetable-based. Again, grain-free is going to be usually made from a mixture of almond flour, coconut flour, tapioca flours, like all mixed together. And there's so many different vegetables. I didn't even realize there's more that are made with this than I had any idea. The one today, we're going to use zucchini, but you could use cauliflower for this, sweet potato, spaghetti squash, eggplant. I haven't made all of them, but it's it would be kind of cool to try. I think the sweet potato one I might try again when I want to eat pizza again in a few weeks. But yeah, I like the idea of having these different textures, these different flavors, and they all are slightly different, but combining them with these other flours, the almond, the coconut, tapioca, it gives a kind of it mimics the texture of a crust, again, without all the carbohydrates and the wheat. In the handout too, I talk a little bit about sauces. I talk a little bit about toppings. You can use whatever sauces and toppings you want. You could do a barbecue pizza with chicken and cheddar cheese, and you could use barbecue sauce as the sauce. Today we're going to use a traditional tomato, and I'm going to do a white crust, or a white sauce, I'm sorry. You could use pesto. It's really up to you. Have fun with it. I recently went to, when I was at Adams, and I posted this on my page, I recently had, they made the chef over there, that's a friend of mine that is like a pizza connoisseur. I had a couple of amazing different versions. One was jalapeno, it had like jalapeno and sweet chili, and what was the other part of it? Serrano ham. And it was just a really delicious kind of new flavors for me that I hadn't had in a pizza before. He also did a Philly cheesesteak one that I tried. So again, and all of them started out with the tomato sauce on these, but you could change those up. This was a tomato-based one, and it had like a peppery steak, some onions, and some like Philly cheesy kind of sauce, like a cheese, I'm sorry. That was amazing. So have fun with it. If you are dairy-free or you don't like to have certain things, don't put them on. But I say have fun with it and play with it, and what you have in your fridge. Sometimes I have extra veggies and things left over. That also is great to throw on a pizza as well. So to start with, I think we'll start with our 72-hour pizza dough as the first dough recipe. And I'm going to bake all these off so you can kind of see the end results as well. I started making this dough a couple of days ago. It does require a little bit of planning because it takes several days, but the flavor profile changes over the course of the 72 hours, which is, I think, very, very cool. And it kind of creates some different flavors that I hadn't tasted before. So that's the really nice part about giving it the 3 days. And it's super, super easy. This is like a very like low maintenance, no need method. So once you have the ingredients and you mix it all together, it sits, and then it sits a little longer, and then it's ready to go. It's actually quite simple. So to start with today, I actually measured out about half the amount on this recipe. So this recipe can make 7 individual like small pizzas. I took the full recipe and made it and divided it into 4. So I got 4 large pizzas. Divide it up as you want. I have here my bread flour. I'm going to add that to my bowl. I'm going to add some salt to my bowl. I have yeast. Now you're going to see here it has very little yeast in it, and that's intentional because you're going to basically use this as like a starter for your dough to ferment. But and but you're not going to, it's going to create more yeast. It's going to create, as it ferments, it's going to create that extra that you need. So you don't need a lot of it, which is what's really great about it, especially right now where yeast is so scarce. This helps you to stretch it out if you want to make multiple batches over multiple weeks. So I have, this is actually 1/4 teaspoon, because again, I'm doing a half batch here. And then you add your water. So I'm actually going to stir this first before I do that. You're going to just mix this together. You don't have to do anything with your yeast in terms of like proofing, starting to give it a head start in the water beforehand. You don't have to do any of that. That's what makes this so kind of cool. It's very low maintenance. Stir it together. Add your water in. It can be room temperature water. I wouldn't do cold water personally. I'd use like a lukewarm. I'm going to mix it together, starting with my spatula here. And then I kind of get to like this place with it. If you can kind of see, which is the nice thing. It's starting to come together. So at this point, I'm going to discard my spatula. I'm going to grab a little bit of this. I have this flour. I ran out of my bread flour, so I'm going to use this a little bit just to dust it slightly. And I'm just going to mix it. And you're going to mix it for like 2 or 3 minutes. You're not going to, it's not much. It's why I say I love this recipe, because it's really a very low maintenance recipe. Lightly knead it. This one came out even actually a little better than the one yesterday. So I'm at a point here. Let's say I've done that a little bit longer. I'm going to take it, and you're going to take it and you're going to put it in a big container with a lid, similar to this one back here, but for today I'm just going to put it in here. You put it in a plastic container with a lid, ideally, or you could use like a ceramic container with plastic wrap. You don't want to use aluminum or a metal bowl if you can help it. There's something about, and I don't know the science behind it, but there's something about the reaction that a metal bowl will have with the dough. It won't rise as nicely. I did learn that in this process. So again, like a ceramic or a plastic. So I would cover this up. Up here. And you're going to literally put it on your counter for 24 hours. You're going to leave it out. Your house is going to start to smell like delicious bread. And this is what I did yesterday. You wake up the next day and it looks like this, which is really awesome. So if you could see, there's like really great little air holes that have formed overnight. And that's great because that means it's alive, it's going to rise, it's going to do all the things we want it to do. And it almost changes color too. I noticed like when I first mix the bread flour, it's not as white. And then as it sits and continues to ferment, it like gets whiter for some reason. I don't know exactly why, but it is very cool. It is very cool. So at this point, it's sat for like I said, the 24 hours out. I'm going to use a little bit of olive oil here. I'm going to divide this into, now again, it's a half batch. So I'm going to divide it into 2 dough balls. And I'm going to form these 2 little dough balls from this dough. And then it's going to sit for a few more days. So again, olive oil is your friend here. It makes it, you can't really form it without it. It'll just stick to your hands and kind of create a mess. So don't worry about using a little extra if you need to. I'm going to fold it. And if you watch the video, he does the same thing. He kind of folds it several times. And then it would go into like my deli container or a bowl. Let's see, it makes this really beautiful, really nice dough ball. Go into my container here. Do the same thing. Fold it, fold it, fold it. can't, and then the cool thing about this recipe is you really can't mess it up. Like I'm not an amazing bread baker by any means. And it's just so easy. Like you can't, it really, as long as you follow the directions and you don't go off the rails, you're good to go. So put this in here. So I got my 2 dough balls kind of hanging out in there. Now, usually I would put them in, I'm gonna actually get another bowl and I'll put them in 2 separate bowls. I'm gonna cover them. They're gonna go back in the fridge. You can add a little bit of, you can add a little bit more olive oil to your, and see, if you break it, like I just broke that, it's no big deal. Just form it back into a ball. That's all you want to do. It's gonna continue to ferment and do its thing anyway, so it's not a big deal. So I add that to my bowl. I'm gonna add a touch more olive oil. If you have like one of those quart containers, like the different restaurants will give you for soup and whatnot, you could use that with a lid. Those work fantastic. Wrap these. Back in the fridge they go now for 2 more days. You don't have to do anything with them. They just hang out in there. Here. And 2 days later, I'll show you, you have this. So originally when I put it in this is a quart container. It was, the dough ball went down to about here. And this is the rest of the way that it rose in the 2 more days. So at this point, you can let it go a few more days too. I've let it go, I think a friend of mine let it go as much as even 4 or 5 days, and the flavor was still delicious and it still kept rising. It didn't, all was good on that front. So if you can't use it all right away, no harm, no problem. I'm going to take my sheet pan. Now, if you had what's called a baking steel is a metal steel pan. I would, you could use that as well. You could also use a pizza stone. I'm doing this a couple different ways today. I don't own a pizza steel. However, I have found that a sheet pan works just fine. You just want to watch it, make sure it doesn't get too dark on the bottom. I have my oven preheated to 550 degrees. Pizza ovens in pizzerias, I think they range from like 600 to 1,000 degrees temperature wise. So you want to get, the hotter the better, because it'll help make that crust extra crisp. So we're going to use a 550 degree oven, and I'm going to actually put the pizza on the lowest rack so that it can get, again, that really crisp crust on the bottom, and it will get nice and puffy on the edges. Because this is like a rectangular pan, I'm going to make a rectangular pizza. Again, if you had a pizza stone and it's round, make it round, whatever you'd like. If you want to make smaller versions, instead of one big one, make 2 small ones. It's up to you. I'm going to do a little bit of spray, and I'm going to add a little olive oil to this pan just so we don't have anything stick. Just a touch here. Take this out. So what has happened in the last 2 days is like the gluten has relaxed. Again, it gets super, super white. And the other cool thing about this is you don't have to roll it out with a rolling pin. It's so relaxed. The gluten is so relaxed, you literally just use your fingertips to push it out, which I think is really cool too as well. So I'm just going to keep kind of squishing it out, squishing it out, squishing it out. It depends. If you like a thicker crust, keep it thicker. If you like it thinner, make it thinner. We kind of like it on the thinner side here. So I'm going to try to get it as thin as I can and stretch it. And this just takes a couple of minutes to do. You also want to pull your dough out about an hour before you start working with it, or even 2. I like to give it even a little longer if I can. It just makes it easier to work with by doing that. And everything I read saying to bring it to room temperature ideally, so, and it definitely helps. Okay, squishing, squishing, squishing. This is going to make what's called a Neapolitan style crust. So all that means is it's going to have like the nice kind of puffy edges. It's kind of like what you see with a lot of brick oven pizza. I like those nice puffy edges and a really thin crust. I personally find that to be my favorite. We've gotten to really eat at some amazing places. One is in Brooklyn, and God, their pizza's so good. It's called Roberta's, and it's Neapolitan style, and I had never had it before, and it is amazing. And since then, I've kind of bopped around. There's actually, if you live in the Dutchess County area, there's an amazing pizzeria called, what is it called, the one in Rhinebeck? Oh, I'm forgetting it all of a sudden. I'll try to post it and send it to you, but it's amazing. It's a place in Rhinebeck, and he studied pizza, and he has a brick oven pizza, or a pizza oven that he brought over from Italy. It's like he's a connoisseur. It's absolutely amazing. Okay, so my dough is ready. It fully almost filled out this large sheet pan that I have. And I'm gonna do, I think, I'm kind of making toppings based on what I had at home. This one I'm just gonna do sausage and cheese. I have some really delicious pork sausage from Adams. This tomato sauce I did include. I'm just not gonna make it today because it's super simple. I also made a quick video on it, a quick live on my Facebook page if you want to quickly watch how I do it. It's literally like a 30-minute sauce recipe that's super simple. If you didn't want to make your own, you could always use a jarred sauce. Completely fine. But I don't like that sometimes the jarred sauces have extra sugar and things in them. And I find the flavor can be a little on the sweet side. So I like to make my own. Onions, garlic, tomatoes, fire roasted I like better than regular canned tomatoes, but whatever you get is fine. Crushed tomatoes, a little diced tomato, basil, delicious. I got this warm, it's already hot. I'm just gonna lightly spread it. So one of the other tricks with making your own pizza is you don't wanna pile on the sauce and the cheese because that will actually give you a soggier crust. So I'm gonna try to do as little of this as I feel I need to. I always like to go a little more than I probably should because I really like that flavor, but you really don't need much. That. I'm going to use a whole milk mozzarella cheese. I like whole milk mozzarella. It's also a low moisture shredded, which just means it's not going to pool with water. If you had a fresh mozzarella, absolutely you can use it. You just want to use less of it. That's kind of why you see in some pizzas it's sporadically placed because it does create some extra water and you just don't want tons of that souping into your crust. So you could absolutely use that. This is what I'm using today. I like the whole milk mozzarella version. Out. And you could have fun with cheeses. You could do so many cool, like an arugula pizza with blue cheese and a little bit of mozzarella cheese. You could put figs on it. You could go any number of directions, put like sliced apple or sliced pears on it. If you want like those kind of flavors. Anything goes. Put my sausage on. This is a Italian pork sausage that Adams makes. I'm very into Adams right now. Just a little PSA, shop local, support your local smaller markets, your smaller stores as much as you can. It's kind of a important thing to think about. I really love Adams because they have such great customer service as well as like amazing products, and they had a beautiful asparagus the other day. Like they try to keep things as local as they can in terms of sourcing. So here we are. So I have my sauce, my cheese, my sausage. I'm gonna put this into my oven, and this only takes like 10 or 15 minutes. So we should be able to see it in a few minutes as I'm doing these other demos for you. These other crusts. In my oven bottom rack, I'm just gonna keep an eye on it. I'm gonna set a timer so I don't forget. And you want to watch for hot spots in your oven. I know I talked this briefly before, but you want to make sure if you have one hot spot, you might need to rotate it halfway through. I'm just going to keep an eye on that. And it doesn't take very long. I've heard that if you have a pizza steel, which is something I'm going to be looking to acquire soon, that it actually can take like 3 to 5 minutes for a small pizza on there because it gets so hot and it conducts the heat so well. The pizza stone, which I'm going to use next, I guess does not heat quite as quickly. They say it loses heat faster. So it also works well, but it's just it's a little different. Any questions about that before I move on to the next the next one. Nope. Everybody's all good? Okay. Crust number 2. I feel like for a lot of people, gluten-free, it's hard to find a gluten-free crust that tastes good or that that mimics that doughiness that traditional crust has. This recipe, however, I think really surprised me. I wasn't entirely sure if I was going to find a good one, to be honest. But this one really works, and I really, really like it. It definitely mimics a real pizza crust. We made like what we made? Garlic bread the other day with it, and it was delicious. So if you are gluten-free and you're looking to not necessarily buy a mix and you want to just stick to, basic ingredients, the thing about the mixes, like I said, you always want to kind of watch is what's in it. This one from Bob's Red Mill, it's brown rice flour, potato starch, millet flour, sorghum flour. So there's a lot of different things in here. If you want fewer ingredients, this is only a couple. And like I said, it tastes great. So to start here, remember what I said about yeast? You can kill it. So this one, you're actually going to proof your yeast a little bit before you start. Get everything kind of working. I have a quick rise yeast packet here. I'm going to add it to my warm water. Now, I'm not going to spend like the next 5 minutes getting this water to the right temperature, but let's imagine it's the perfect temperature, 110, 115 degrees. Then I'll add our yeast to it. And you could add sugar, but I'm, again, trying not to. If you're doing gluten-free and I like using honey. Honey is a really great alternative to sugar. I'm just going to add that like right in there, about a tablespoon or so. And that's going to be step 1 because you're going to want to give it about 5 minutes or so to kind of do its thing. This is an instant yeast. You could use active dry yeast instead if you'd rather. But I had this one packet of instant yeast left, so I thought I would use it. The honey is going to help feed the yeast, and the warm water is going to help get it started. Flours. We have a cup of white rice flour, 3/4 of a cup of brown rice flour, 1/4 of a cup of tapioca flour. And I think I said this last time too, but you could, if you didn't have tapioca, use arrowroot flour or cornstarch. They are sort of interchangeable. I have my salt. Mix this again. Mix.
Active dry yeast and instant yeast.
Active dry yeast is the yeast grains are larger, so it takes a little longer to proof than instant. Instant, you can tell. I actually saw this online. You can tell the differences. They're just like the grains are smaller, so it'll work faster with an instant yeast versus an active dry. But I believe this one I did use instant yeast, but you could use active dry as well. It just might take a few extra minutes to rise. Okay, flour's mixed. My egg. Add a tablespoon of olive oil. And now in like real time, I would have given this a few extra minutes, but you can kind of see there's bubbles forming. That means my yeast is alive. That's what you want to see. And if you had given it a few extra minutes, it would kind of make a frothy layer here. That's what you want. I'm going to add that right in. Mix. I've been finding, at least at Adams, I've been finding rice flour has been pretty easy to source. This one I used today, where is it? it's a sweet rice, white rice flour, which means it's made from sushi rice. It doesn't have a super sweet flavor to it, but it just says it's milled from sticky rice. It works just as well as like a regular white rice flour would. And if you had just the brown rice flour, you could use just brown rice flour. But yeah, so here we are. Okay. Check my pizza here. Ooh, it's looking good in there. Okay, so got my dough here mixing. So at this point, just mix it by hand a little bit. I'm gonna add a touch. Olive oil is your friend with all of these. If you feel like it's too sticky, just add a touch of olive oil and it will let your hands work with it, because if you see, like, my hands are sticking to what's going on, which is unhelpful if you want to make it into like a really nice smooth dough. So I'm going to use my hands just to finish combining this. You get this really nice dough. It really does, like, again, it really does mimic. I've been pretty impressed by this. So once it's at that point, I would take a pizza, I'm sorry, not a pizza. I have a pizza stone. I would take a pizza stone. I would have it in my oven already ready to go. It's hot. If I don't have a pizza stone, again, it's fine. You can use a sheet tray. That's totally good too. I like to get it hot before I put the gluten-free crust on it. So that would be my one disclaimer when you're doing that. I would get your sheet pan super hot, your stone soup super hot. If you have a steel, beautiful. And then add my crust. So I would take my crust at this point. I would get some parchment paper. And I actually start with it right on my surface. And again, just like the one I just showed you, the dough comes out so nice this way. You just use your hands to kind of roll it or to kind of form it into a circle. A little extra oil, again, never hurts. But you're just going to use your hands. You're going to form it into a really nice circle. Or a square, or you can make whatever actual shape you like. All of these are like really easy just to make by hand. You certainly could use a rolling pin. The only trick you're going to have with a rolling pin is that it's going to want to stick. So you just want to make sure that you're aware of that and you're keeping it from sticking more. And if you can use your hands, I'm always like a big firm believer in get your hands involved. You can kind of feel your way through it a little better. This will go, again, you want it as thin as you want it. You want it as thick as you want it. Or fine. At this point, I'm happy enough with it. I'm going to sheet pan. Slide it onto my hot sheet pan. It would go in the oven for 10 minutes. So the two differences also between the gluten-free and the grain-free as opposed to the traditional crust. The traditional crust you don't par bake ahead of time. The gluten-free and the grain-free you're going to par bake before you put any toppings and cheese on. So I'm going to do a presto changer here. This I would put in the oven, again, 550. If you're not comfortable with 550, you don't want to go that high in your oven, 500. Timer. This will go in the oven for about 8 minutes. And when it is done, it'll look like this. And it is so cool because it pops up a little bit. You can also freeze this from this point, which is great. So if you want to make a couple of crusts, keep them in your freezer. They will work fantastic if you want to pull it out for a quick weeknight dinner if you're busy. I think that is very cool. Check it out. So that was, I don't know, 10 minutes. This is your This is the crust. This is your pizza with the 3-day fermentation. So it's delicious. I'm gonna slice it a little bit. I'm gonna let it cool slightly. But yeah, this is the real deal. You have a little bit of a puffy crust on the end. You got a really nice crisp crust on the bottom. Outstanding, super easy. Does not take that long at all to bake. Over here. Okay, back to gluten-free. Today I think I'm gonna do this a little, I'm not gonna put a traditional sauce on this. I'm not gonna put a traditional tomato sauce. I'm gonna do a white sauce. So yeah, from this state, again, now you're gonna do your sauce and your cheese. I'm going to do a white sauce. I like garlic on mine. I kind of took and pre-toasted some garlic and oil here. If you don't like a lot of garlic, you don't have to put any. I really like it. The local pizzeria by us makes a phenomenal white pizza, and it's phenomenal because of the garlic. I'm a big fan. So I'm just gonna spoon some of this on it and make a light layer. I'm going to add some ricotta cheese. Again, a huge fan of this. This is a whole milk ricotta. Really good stuff. You could do like an even layer if you wanted. I'm just doing dollops because I like to have like those bites of goodness. Spread these around. Good deal. I have some really nice chiffonaded shredded basil. I'm gonna throw some of that on here. And again, going back to, I'm gonna add a little bit of my mozzarella. Now this is gonna go back in my oven, and I'm gonna put it on the bottom, and I'm gonna do it on a sheet tray like this. Usually what I would do is just use my pizza stone. However, my pizza stone I'm gonna use for the next recipe. So that's kind of why I have it this way. If you do it this way in your oven, you just wanna be careful because this might slide off. So I'm gonna try to do this and not have that happen. I do it like this sometimes. It works out fine, but you just wanna make sure of that. And this I don't have to get hot first. I can just put it right in. And I'm gonna give that a few minutes, melt the sauce and the cheese, and that will be good to go. The last one is one I've had the most fun making. Oh, actually, before I go forward, any questions on that? Before I keep going, just let me know. Otherwise, I'm gonna keep moving. All right, if you are grain-free, if you don't like to have a lot of carbohydrates, if you wanna enjoy pizza and not have all of those other things in there, this crust is phenomenal. I am so excited about it because I was not sure I was going to love it, and I really love it a lot. We're going to do a zucchini crust, which I'm very excited about. So, a couple of things when you're working with any vegetable-based crust you want to just know. You want to know that vegetables contain a lot of water, so you want to be aware of that, and you want to know that you're going to probably extract some of that water before you make your crust. Otherwise, it will be super soupy. Again, we don't want that. So I have here some zucchini. Now I did this yesterday. I took zucchini, I shredded them on my box grater. You could also use, I think I showed the last time, the food processor method where you just put it through your cheese grater attachment in your processor and you have that zucchini. You put it on a sheet pan. You put it in the oven for about 10 minutes until it starts to cook down. You let it cool. And then you squeeze out as much of the water as you can. And that's what this is. This is about 2 medium to large zucchinis. And again, I did this yesterday. You want to use your paper towel to kind of get as much of that extracted as you can. If you were doing a cauliflower crust, I do it the exact same way. I pre-cook my cauliflower, I shred it up first. I pre-cook my cauliflower in the oven. I usually throw it in the oven for 10 minutes. Cool my cauliflower down. Use a towel, like a very light towel, and I squeeze out as much of that water as I can, and then add my other ingredients to it. Same thing applies here. The one thing I will say in comparing the two different ones is this comes out much crisper. It just does. So for me, it's a preferred way of making a grain-free crust now. And I just started playing with it this week. And I think I wasted so much time making cauliflower crusts that weren't crispy. And this one is amazing. So one of the things you definitely need to have when you're making any kind of, with the zucchini crust is you want to have coconut flour. Coconut flour is really great because what it does is it actually absorbs that extra water. So yes, you absolutely want to squeeze that water out, but whatever is left, this is going to absorb. So that's the really cool thing. So the recipe that I had originally found had the coconut flour. I also decided to add some tapioca flour to that. And I think that's actually what made it really crispy. So, so add your tapioca flour, in this case, add that right in. Eggs. In there. I did not get my salt, so I'm gonna grab some salt. And I add onion powder to this. I like adding onion and garlic powder to my grain-free crust for that extra flavor. If you don't like that, don't put it in. If you like other flavors, if you like oregano, if you like paprika or whatever, you can add different spices to this. It'll take it all really well. Again, I'm using onion powder today. And this is like literally a dump and stir, meaning everything goes in, everything gets stirred around, and you're good to go. I'm gonna add about a cup of mozzarella cheese. You could use shredded cheddar as well if you'd rather. And I'm just gonna mix this by hand. It's kind of hard to mix it with a different tool.
It says 2 extra large eggs. If you use large eggs, you still use 2.
Yeah, you can do that, Kara. Actually, I had the extra large ones, and so I used them. But I did use 2 large ones as well, and they both work. So yes, either one will work. It's only a subtle difference, and either one will be fine. So again, the other fun thing you could do with this, you could add any different kind of cheese. That is a shredded kind of cheese. It's what's going to help it kind of crisp up and hold together. So you definitely want some kind of a cheese. And there you go. So you have this really nice mixture. It's like, if you feel it, I'm trying to figure out how to describe it. It's got a little bit of moisture to it, but it also does want to come together. You can really feel that. If you feel it's too wet, add a little extra of that coconut flour. But what you're gonna see is as it sits, because the coconut flour absorbs that moisture, it will get a little more firm as it sits. If you let it sit for a few minutes. Okay. Wash my hands really fast. That's the one thing I need is a sink. An extra sink right here. So then at this point, I'm gonna, again, just do exactly what I did with the gluten-free crust. I'm gonna form it into a circle. And the thinner you get this, so this is the other trick with any of these veggie crusts, the thinner you make them, the crisper they will get. So I highly, highly suggest going really, really thin on this. You just wanna use your hands to form. If you wanted to use a rolling pin, I suppose what you could do is put an extra piece of parchment on top of this and try to roll it, but it gets really tricky, especially with these veggie crusts, to do that in a way that doesn't mangle it more than it forms. So again, go back to use your hands. Form it, form it, form it. Oh, let me check out my. Woohoo! This is done. That's the 6/10 of me being a chef. All right. Let's not lose everything. Check it out. How good does that look, right? Gluten-free, delicious, white pizza, amazing. And again, like the 500 degrees, it really makes a big difference in the crust, the texture, and how fast it bakes. If you're not sure, just do it every couple of minutes. This actually, I think I put for 10. It's got 3 minutes left, so it was about 7 minutes. Done and done. Okay, so at this point, I've got my crust here. I would put it in the oven. And again, I kind of have these done in stages today, just so I'm not take too long, but this would go in the oven just as it is on a pizza stone or a steel or a hot sheet pan if you don't have either of those. Give it about 8 minutes in there, and then you can just, and you want to put it on parchment paper, then you just literally flip it so that both sides get evenly golden brown. It comes together really, really nicely. I'm just going to leave this here for a minute. I'm running out of places to put stuff. And when you're done, you have this, and it is awesome. And this I made yesterday. So it literally, it has a fantastic texture. It's not going to be doughy. Now, if you were going to not make this the day before, that's totally fine. Just give it about 10 minutes once it is done with that pre-cooked state. Once it comes to that pre-cooked state, so that you can allow it to, it says it won't let it absorb the sauce quite as readily. So this is just fine because again, I made it yesterday, but like you can see, I can even pick it up. Like it's fantastic. Now, if I was really to manhandle it, it would come apart. But I've not seen a crust like this with veggies come out this well, like ever. Hence when I'm gonna say all good things about it. So let's see. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm gonna put this on my pizza stone so you guys can kind of see that. And then we're gonna do our final toppings. Burn my countertop. So I'm going to get my pizza stone out. I've had it in the oven preheating this entire time. This is my pizza stone. It's giant. It's very dark. It's been used multiple times. Sometimes you have to grease this slightly, but I'm not going to worry about it today. I'm going to put this crust right on it. Now, if it was already baked on this beforehand, obviously it would just stay on here, and I would just add my sauce, my toppings from this point. Today I'm going to do on this one, I decided I was going to go all veggie because it's a veggie crust, so why not veggie toppings? So I'm going to do tomato sauce. Again, biggest key is to not go too crazy on the sauce, and I always feel like there's never enough, but it probably should stop when I'm ahead. A little bit of that. An alternative cheese I just learned of for people who are vegan is this Daya, I think it's how you pronounce it, Daya cheese. It's very, very similar to mozzarella. It cooks up really well and it tastes delicious. So that's a little tip on that. I'm going to add a little bit of this to my pie. I know you can hear it sizzling because it's hot, 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 hot. I had some, I posted, I'm so excited about these asparagus I found at Adam. So this is going on my pizza today. We had some left over. If you had any other roasted veggies, you could put them on. You could even cut them really thin depending on what they are and throw them on raw and they will cook in the oven. But this is going to be a quick cook, so I wouldn't have thrown these on raw. If you only have a couple minutes, they'll still be a little bit on the raw side when you're done. I'm going to add, I love red onion. Don't have to have red onion. I always have these on hand. And I'm going to put a few slices of tomato. Tomato is one of those things I love, but you just want to watch how much you put on because, again, it's a very watery vegetable. If you put too much on, it's going to get kind of watery. But I'm going to throw some on today. I'm going to add a touch of extra sea salt, or Himalayan salt in this case, actually. Got some extra of this basil. I'll throw some of this extra basil on too. Why not? Okay. And this is gonna go into the oven. And again, just a couple minutes. The crust is already baked, it's ready to go. So you're really just trying to melt those toppings. And that is it. Any questions?